Hello, my name is Nick, and I'm going to be the next school shooter of 2018. My goal is at least 20 people with an AR-15 and a couple tracer rounds. I think I can get done.
It's said that one common motivation amongst every mass shooter is that they want notoriety. It's news stories like these that show killing as many people as possible can help you escape your hardships and grant you notoriety and infamy. The way that the media covers these stories of gruesome murder is fundamentally flawed. It has become a rarity that enough precautions are taken to prevent the inspiration of another ill-minded individual from attempting to duplicate or outdo these horrific acts. Criminologists say that the media is causing a psychological effect known as the copycat effect. This effect is often responsible for a crime being committed in the same way that was already established by a previous crime or criminal. These are known as copycat crimes. One of the most classic examples are the copycat killers of the infamous unidentified London murderer Jack the Ripper. In 2008, one of these copycat killers, Derek Brown, followed in Jack's footsteps. Brown borrowed the book titled Killers, the Most Barbaric Murderers of Our Time from his local library, and seemed to have assembled a DIY murder kit, including a bow saw, a steam cleaner, and a waterproof sheeting. It is believed that he then picked up his victims from the Whitechapel area of East London, murdered them, and then dismembered their bodies in his own bathtub. Other infamous cases include the Tylenol killer copycat Stella Nickel, the Zodiac copycat Etta Seda, and the multiple school shooting copycats as mentioned earlier. Although most of these copycat killers are known to imitate notorious murderers from real life, in some cases, these copycat killers can find inspiration from fictional mediums as well.
He must have grabbed me, and we started struggling. Oh, and I'm guessing during this, that's when I'm like, okay, I gotta try to fight. And that's something I missed, actually. I tried punching him too, but I was so weak. And I remember trying to punch him, and I know I can't hit this mask because that's gonna hurt my hands, so I'm trying to punch him in his chest. And I'm thinking, man, why am I so weak? And my punches aren't, I feel like I'm not doing anything. And it's like my punches are so weak. And then, so I realized, okay, I'm punching him, I'm not going to do anything. He's way bigger than me, and can't do anything. So then I started trying to kick him in the
This is Giles Tetraelt. On October 3rd, 2008, Giles Tetraelt was driving through the streets of Edmonton, Alberta. Despite Edmonton being known for its relatively high crime rate, Giles didn't have a worry in the world where he was going. He was headed to a first date. He had recently begun browsing the popular dating site called plentyoffish.com, where he met a promising and attractive woman, Sheena. Pretty quickly, Sheena seemed eager that the two meet each other in person, and Giles agreed. As Giles asked for the address, Sheena apparently refused to give it to him. Instead, she sent him very specific and thorough directions on how to get there, telling him that the garage door would be open for him. Giles then arrived at the supposed address and parked his car directly in front of the garage door, which was left slightly open. As Giles made his way inside the dark garage to meet Sheena, he was attacked and hit with a stun baton. Giles managed to get a decent look at the attacker, and he could see a man towering over him with a hockey mask. The masked man pulled out a gun and pointed it at Giles. He was then pushed to the ground and blindfolded with duct tape. At that moment, Giles realized that he never told anybody where he was going that night. So, he ripped the tape off of his eyes and jumped at the attacker, grabbing the gun. As he grabbed the gun, he could tell that it was made of plastic. So, Giles felt a glimmer of hope. He grabbed a pair of handcuffs, which were on the ground, in an attempt to defend himself. The attacker started punching him repeatedly as he struggled towards the garage door. He then rolled under the garage door and escaped outside. Unfortunately, the effects of the stun gun were finally getting to him, and Giles' legs were paralyzed. As he continued to attempt to crawl away, he noticed that the man was behind him. The man then grabbed him and began to drag him back towards the garage. Fortunately for Giles, the attacker fled back into the garage, giving Giles an opportunity to get back into his car and drive away.
Did you get him?
No.
Did you hit him?
No, couldn't.
And did he hit you?
No.
What about kick you?
He tried, but I swerved as well. So
Like, is this an all-out intense battle, or is it like...
No, that's the thing, is like, this is the whole thing, this is what I'm thinking. While I'm doing this, this guy, he had, if he was more professional, he could have killed me right away. Like, right when I walked in, I didn't see him, he could have hit me over the head with a bat, a baton, or anything.
Yeah.
He could have knocked me unconscious right away. And I don't know why he did that. His whole plan was to use this taser thing on me first, and that was stupid on his part. But he had many chances to kill me, he never did. So that's what I thought afterward all this happened. He had a bigger plan for me. I thought maybe he was going to handcuff me and take me somewhere and do something.
So you're now trying to punch him, you feel weak, you're trying to kick him, you're not connecting.
Yeah, that's when he goes, well, since you're not cooperating, this is the way it has to be now. And then he starts punching me in my left side of my face. And for some reason, again, it would have been more effective for him to punch me in the nose, the eyes, something. Because if he had punched me in the nose, I'd have been down, right? But he was punching the side of the head, trying to get my temple or knock me unconscious for some reason.
Tell me about the struggle with the gun.
See, now this is weird because I'm facing this way. He pulls the gun out again, and I think because I grabbed the gun, somehow we maneuvered. We were struggling again, and I'm trying to break the gun, right? So we're struggling, and somehow I ended up this way again, struggling with this gun, and he's here back at the door. Okay, so because I just remember the door being there, and then I'm just trying to break this gun because this is I know it's plastic, and I know if I
What's he doing?
he's yelling at me because he doesn't want me touching his gun, and so then I wouldn't let go, obviously, and I had a hold of his other arm just in case he tried to punch me in the left, but he never did. And so we're just struggling. You could tell. It's just weird that because if he was a real gun, he would have fired it or whatnot. He never did. He had nothing, and he didn't. He never. Just wasn't professional. It was just like it was maybe his first time. That's how I thought of it.
One of the most controversial aspects of this case is that Giles Tetraalt didn't report the incident to the police right after he was attacked. Instead, he coped with the situation by convincing himself it was just simply a failed robbery and it couldn't have been anything more.
Just have a chair there. Okay, Mark. Now, just to go through things, like I mentioned to you that I'm going to do a taped interview with you and stuff. There's my ID. Okay, so I'm Detective Mike Tabler, Police Service. And I'm here to talk to you tonight because the fact that you happen to be the renter of a garage that has come to our attention due to a missing person. Okay? Now, first of all, can you please state your name for me?
Mark Twitchell.
This is Mark Twitchell. Mark Twitchell was an aspiring filmmaker based in Edmonton, Alberta. Mark graduated from the Radio and Television Arts program at the Northern Alberta Institute of Technology in the year 2000. That same year, Mark went on to meet a woman by the name of Megan Castarella after making a dating resume and browsing through online dating sites. Months after they began talking, Megan would fly down to Edmonton and the two would tie the knot. Mark was a fun and loving partner who was passionate about film and television and would often imitate some of his favorite movie characters. However, things began to change relatively quickly. Megan had discovered that Mark had cheated on her multiple times, and that he was a compulsive liar. Things took an even darker turn as Mark opened up to her about his twisted fantasies. Mark would spend lots of his free time creating fake identities online and would act them out on dating websites and chat rooms. One of the characters that he pulled inspiration from was the fictional TV serial killer Dexter Morgan. Mark had also asked Megan if she had ever thought about killing somebody. She responded that she had, just like anybody consumed by rage in certain moments, but that she would never act on those feelings because it's the wrong thing to do. Mark had a different point of view. Mark had apparently thought about finding and killing a homeless person whose disappearance likely wouldn't alarm anybody. So, Megan ended their marriage in 2005, and less than a year later, Mark would marry another woman that he met online. With dreams of one day directing blockbuster films, Mark directed a full-length Star Wars fan film prequel named The Secrets of the Rebellion in 2007. He also scripted a comedy called Day Players, which was set to finish the first round of funding at the end of October 2008.
Just like short breaths first. Sure. You're not going to Lamaze, right?
Oh, okay.
It's just simple short breaths because you want to keep yourself. Nose check. Nose check. You got anything?
Nothing.
Nothing? Good. Dry skin?
Nothing. You look good. You're fine. Your teeth are a little.
It's good.
What, sniper?
No.
Good?
Good.
Okay, sweet.
Right.
Unfortunately for Mark, neither of these films would reach the audiences that he had hoped. And on October 31st, 2008, Mark Twitchell was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. On October 10th, 2008, exactly 1 week after Giles Tetrailed was attacked by the masked man in the garage, a man named John Altinger sent an email to his friend, Dale Smith, at 7:10 p.m. saying that he was heading over to a residential garage to meet up with a woman. He had met this woman, named Jen, on plentyoffish.com. John had a tendency of always being active online and in touch with his friends, so it was very unusual behavior when John went silent for the next 2 days. He even missed a motorcycle lesson he was supposed to give to Dale. Then, on October 13th, 3 days after going silent, John's friends received an email from his account. It said that he had met an extraordinary woman named Jen, and that he and Jen was going to visit her home in Costa Rica, and that he would call them all around Christmas time. This instantly raised some suspicion amongst John's friend group, so they contacted the police and reported him missing. However, they were anxious to figure out what had happened and didn't have the patience to leave it completely in the hands of authorities. So, they broke into his apartment and found no signs that he had gone on a vacation to Costa Rica. His clothes, suitcase, and passport were all still there. He even left his motorcycle uncovered, which he would never do if he was leaving for a prolonged period of time. Thankfully, before heading over to meet up with his date, John had sent Dale Smith the directions to his destination. These are the same directions that Jen had provided. These directions led Detective Clark to the garage. His first plan of action was to speak with the person who was currently renting it out. That person was Mark Twitchell. And finally, we can now take a deeper look into the interrogations of Mark Twitchell.
I'm here to talk to you tonight because of the fact that you happen to be the renter of a garage that has come to our attention due to a missing person. Okay? Now, first of all, can you please state your name for me?
Mark Twitchell.
And it's Twitchell?
Correct.
Okay. Your date of birth, sir?
July 4th, 79.
4th of July, 79?
Yeah.
Okay, and your address at home?
Is 30 Dayton Crescent.
30 Dayton?
Yeah, Dayton.
Okay. In
St. Albert.
St. Albert? Okay. And postcode there?
T8N 4X4.
Okay, phone number at home? Okay. Now, the garage in question that we're talking about tonight, can you tell me the address of that place?
5712 40th Avenue.
5712 40th Avenue. And you pay for it?
Yeah.
For the rental?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now I understand that you're doing this with a company and you're doing some other things.
Yeah.
So you personally rented it on behalf of the company.
Right.
And what do you call your company?
Express Entertainment.
Express Entertainment.
Yeah.
Okay. And I understand you're filming and stuff like that there.
Yeah.
Okay. And that was the purpose of getting the facility.
Yeah.
The project that Mark is referring to here is called House of Cards. It's a short suspense thriller film about a man lured to a garage through an online dating site. When the man enters the garage, he is attacked, bound to a table, and murdered with a butcher knife. Mark finished filming this production on the last weekend of September, but it was filmed in the same garage that Mark is being questioned about during this interview.
So all day Saturday we used to shoot in that garage area, and then the Sunday in the evening we filmed somewhere else. So yeah, for that purpose, it was actually just the one day that we were there for actual shooting. Before that, we were in and out throughout the month for production design purposes, which was building our set pieces, getting things set up in there, power, that kind of thing, getting everything ready.
Okay. So you, what type of film is it, or that you're shooting at this particular time? That you're talking about shooting at this, what sort of a film is it?
It's a suspense thriller, actually. It's a short film. The total runtime is only going to be about 8 or 9 minutes.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Suspense.
So I started making, my first film was a feature,
Yeah.
sci-fi fantasy film based on Star Wars content, which is all completely 100% shot now and in post-production. I'm working on a comedy right now, which is it's actually a full-blown feature that's actually going to have a decent budget in the neighborhood of about $3.5 million. So yeah, It's been a long process. I started developing Day Players, which is the name of the comedy, back in December of last year. Television.
Oh, yeah.
I wanted to get a career going, so I got that whole thing developed and going, and pitched it to countless people, playing one side against the other to get talent and money to agree and come to the middle. And
It is not hard to notice that Mark likes to go on tangents about his career, achievements, aspirations, and so on. Almost every topic or question that the detective brings up will work its way back to Mark and his die-hard passion for filmmaking. Something to take note of is how void Mark's responses are of anything related to the disappearance that he is clearly a suspect of. If he didn't commit a crime, it would make sense to stay focused and intent on giving helpful and relevant answers and information. However, if Mark did commit this crime, it makes sense to want to keep this conversation as far away from that topic as possible. Talking about his film career is the perfect diversion for Mark. He knows enough about it that he can dilute the conversation with irrelevant details and take the focus off of the topic of the disappearance. It also gives the illusion of confidence. A confidence that somebody guilty and under pressure might not display. One of the last things that you would want to do if trying to convince somebody that you are innocent is freeze up. And in Mark's head, the more he talks, the better. But this illusion isn't very hard to see through, especially for a seasoned detective. And in the end, it only makes Mark seem more suspicious.
So, now you've been told that we're looking for a missing man.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Have you been told his name?
no.
Okay. The name is John
Okay.
Altinger. Altinger.
Okay.
Does that name ring a bell to you or mean anything to you?
No.
Never heard it before?
No.
He's nobody that you'd been using as an actor or that maybe Mike or Jason would have been in touch with?
No, I don't think so. I don't know if Mike or Jay know him, but nothing that in terms of casting or production crew or anything like that.
No?
No.
Not a worker, not an employee you've heard about?
No.
No.
This is the first time in the interview that Mark's behavior significantly changes. They never told Mark the name of the missing man that they were looking for, and as soon as they do, the reality sinks in, and Mark goes from being confident and rambling about himself to being quiet and intently listening. His responses are short and barely whispering. Mark is treading carefully, trying to collect information on what the authorities already know, without revealing any indication that he's involved in the disappearance of John Altinger.
Okay, the indications we have, and we've got this through our investigations, and the address comes up, and the garage is described, and he actually says that he was there on that particular day. The particular day we're talking about is I think the 15th.
15th, okay.
Now, and I may be mistaken, I may be mixing a couple of things up, but I think the 15th. And that's the day you're indicating that you were probably down there putting supplies there.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
Like on Wednesday or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was in and around the same sort of time frame that you were there. You know, that he would have been there.
Okay.
Like in the afternoon.
Really?
Yeah. And he was supposed to go there and meet a girl who described the address and told him how to get there. Now this is girl he's met through, an internet site.
Okay.
Doesn't know her from before. So he, of course, lets friends know where he's going.
Right. Okay.
But go to meet a girl, swear him over. Sends it out to a few friends. All of a sudden, he disappears. Last known place was there. Said he went there. Met a guy. The girl wasn't there. Met a guy in the garage.
In the garage?
Apparently.
Okay.
Can you tell me? What does it explain to you? Tell me what you're thinking.
Well, it explains the foreign padlock. If he switched it out or something like that, that makes sense.
Who switched it?
Whoever this guy is.
Well, he didn't switch anything. He went there and met somebody there. Yeah.
Okay, but that's what I mean. Like, whoever he met there,
Yeah.
because I don't know of anybody else that has access unless they, accessed it themselves, pretty much.
So your lock was totally gone off there,
Yeah.
okay? The latch was still there, but a different padlock's there. So anybody could have come along with a set of bolt cutters, cut yours off, put their own on, right? That still doesn't give them access to the garage because there's still a deadbolt, right?
Yeah.
This guy indicates to his friends that he arrived, met a guy in there, the girl wasn't there, got a call from her later,
Okay.
was going back to the garage.
Huh.
And that's where the trail goes cold on us.
So, okay, let me get this straight.
Yeah.
The guy who's missing
Yeah.
shows up to my garage,
Right. 571240 at that. Yeah.
claims to have been in it,
Yeah, and talk to a guy.
talked to another guy.
Yeah.
So now there's two of them. And then he leaves.
Because the girl's not there, that he's supposedly.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. And then he talks to her on the phone.
I don't know that he talks to her on the phone or if he gets a message from her or which way that one was.
Okay.
Okay.
He somehow ends up
Yeah.
communicating with her, and then comes
Goes back to the garage to meet her.
Okay. All right.
Now, does that sound like anything that you know about?
Not at all.
Does it sound like anything that could be related in any way to any movie sort of stuff you're doing, or?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, I'm the producer. I pretty much control all the elements.
Yeah.
So if there was anything like that, if somebody needs to borrow the place or whatever, then they would let me know.
They'll let you know.
They'd ask or something like that. So yeah, no, I don't know anything about that.
No. Does the name Jen mean anything to you?
No, Constable Maxwell asked me about that too, and
Yes,
I don't
yeah.
know Jen or anything like that.
So the name Jen doesn't mean anything to you. You don't know a Jen. You don't have an actress named Jen.
Mm-mm.
What's your wife's name?
Jess.
Jess. Not Jen.
No.
Okay. Is your wife involved in anything with the garage at all, or does she even know it exists, or?
Yeah, she knows it exists. She tries to stay out of the film stuff as much as possible. She's, from her own explanation, too close to the material, because every time I talk about these things, it's like this step, this step, this step, this step, and it's just too much. So I try to, pretty much kind of curb that whole thing. If she asks about it, I'll gladly tell her, but generally she's not interested until something comes to fruition. So
Yeah.
This whole time for the past year, I've been working on financing my other movie. She'll ask me like, do you is the money in the bank yet, or something like that. Until it's in the bank, don't get excited, that sort of stuff. So
Yeah. Okay.
but
This may be a good point to introduce another one of Mark's pieces of writing. It was titled The Profile of a Psychopath. This was an attempt at documenting and analyzing his own psyche, with a disclaimer at the beginning stating, this is not a clinical diagnosis, an informational breakdown, or a case study as such. This is a way for me to get out on virtual paper exactly what I think I am so I can evaluate it and understand it best. In trying to do this, Mark documents many real scenarios in his personal life that exhibit what he believes to be the behavior of a psychopath. This gives us important context that reveals Mark's deceptive character while observing this interrogation. For example, at the time of this interview, the marriage between Mark and his second wife Jessica was in trouble. The couple was sleeping in separate rooms and taking marriage counseling. Jess was under the impression that Mark had been carrying on as a salesman for a security company, and that every Friday after work he would attend an appointment with a psychiatrist. In reality, Mark had lost his job just 5 months earlier and was pretending to go to work. While living off of his investors' money, he left his wife completely in the dark. This habit of deception was nothing new to Mark. Early in his marriage, Mark used fraudulent documents to qualify for the mortgage on his family's house. In all of his previous relationships, Mark would constantly break the trust of his significant other. Even Tracy Higgins, one of Twitchell's first girlfriends in the late 1990s, had to end their relationship after discovering that Mark had repeatedly lied to her. Near the end of this interview, Mark tells another lie that's more relevant to this case.
Are you shooting any porn there or anything like that?
No. I've actually been teased about that a lot.
Yeah?
And I tease back by saying that, oh, I should have gotten into porn because it's guaranteed money in the bank.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's really not the environment for that. For one thing, it's not even heated.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
no. It's
Yeah,
just,
it would be a little cool.
And then, again, if a filmmaker gets into that side of the industry, the other side will never take you seriously.
Okay.
So, unless I want to go making like 100 aliases, call myself Dick Hart or some stupid porn name or whatever, you know, like that just wouldn't make any sense. And I've never been really anywhere near interested in that kind of material. I want to be taken seriously. I don't necessarily have to go after Academy Awards or anything like that. I just want to make movies that'll entertain people and get out there and into actual movie theaters and have tickets and stuff like that. So that's always been the ultimate goal for me. But yeah, no porn or anything like that.
Okay. So, have you ever heard of these online dating site kind of things? What are some of the ones you've heard of?
Oh man, I don't know. Match.com. I've heard of the Plenty of Fish one.
Okay. Plenty of Fish.
Yeah, there's what else is there? I don't know. There's a bunch of them. There's like hundreds of them.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. You don't frequent them?
No.
Okay.
I did some research on them for a freelance article that I wrote. That was like about a month ago.
About a month ago?
Maybe more. It's a little over a month ago. This is a freelance project that I got. I'm on this website called ifreelance.com to get like, you know, basically writing gigs and stuff like that. And this guy said, you know what, we needed an article for online dating and stuff like that, and the rules and the etiquette and whatnot. I said, oh, okay, I'll jump on that. So checked out some of that stuff in order to write the article and put it together and did it and got paid for it and everything like that. So, yeah, but...
So what did you end up doing with that? So you pretend you're somebody and do the online dating sort of thing and land it all up? And
you go there, but you tell everybody what's going on, right? Like I, you know, would say it's a social experiment for the purpose of figuring out what your guys' view and opinion of it is and that kind of thing. And it's a lot easier to just to touch base with the people who use the site and get their overall opinion from it.
Yeah.
Mark just accidentally linked himself to the method in which John Altinger was lured to the garage. It's hard to say for sure why Mark would share these details in the first place, until you look at the profile of a psychopath document again. This entire story about a dating site freelance gig was a lie fabricated to cover up his infidelity. His wife had caught him red-handed on a dating site specifically catered towards cheating spouses. Instinctively, Mark proceeded to make up an entire story, almost as if it was a film production. He created context and characters that didn't exist just to sell the story to his distraught wife. He created a fake email for somebody named Phil Porter. He even convinced an actor who thought he was auditioning for a role to call him, posing as his manager so his wife could listen in. It's clear that Mark Twitchell is a pathological liar, caught in his own web of lies. Knowing that the process of getting a warrant would take a while, Detective Clark asked Mark if he could take another look at the garage. Mark then agreed to meet a police officer to give him a key for the garage, and to sign a consent form so they could survey the garage without him. The next day, on October 20th, as Mark sat himself in the officer's passenger seat, he said that he had more information that he wanted to share. Part of this information was that on October 15th, while getting gas on the way to drop off the cleaning supplies, a man approached him trying to sell him his car. The man said that he had met a wealthy woman online and was leaving for Costa Rica for 3 months, and that when they got back from their trip, she would buy him a new car. All he wanted for his car was whatever cash Mark had on him at the time. Mark said that he bought a red 2005 Mazda 3 hatchback from this stranger for $40, the same vehicle that belonged to John Altinger. Not believing his story, Mark was asked to come down to the police station for another interview. And after spending 2 hours writing his account of buying a car off of John Altinger, he was then asked to retell his story. And then he was asked to retell it again.
Tell me again.
Mark Twitchell was then interviewed one more time.
There's something else I want to tell you, Mark. And that's that there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that you're involved in the disappearance of John Altinger. No doubt in my mind at all, Mark.
Why?
As I said, Mark, there's no doubt in my mind that you're involved in this disappearance. I just want to get to the bottom of this, because this is not going to go away. It's not going to leave you, Mark.
I don't understand.
I'm going to explain some of the reasons to you. But you do understand, because you know what I'm talking about. You're involved in this, and unfortunately, something got carried away. Something got carried away with this guy. I mean, talking to you here tonight, you seem like a decent guy. And I think that something happened that night that maybe you just didn't have total control of. And I'm here to get to the bottom of it. Because it's not going to go away. This is going to stay with you. And we need to clear this up here and now. We need to clear this up tonight. You need to tell me the truth about what's going on. What happened with this fella. I mean, this happened because of the movie thing? Something that went too far?
I have no idea what the hell is going on.
You do have an idea. You have a very good idea, Mark, about what's going on. You know exactly what happened there that night. I mean, you haven't told us the truth. You haven't told us anything close to the truth. You do understand we've talked to Joss? We've got his side of the story. All I'm looking for is your side of the story. But the truth. Not what you've been telling me. Because that what you've been telling me hasn't been the truth. Has it, Mark?
This can't be. I don't...
What do you mean it can't be?
I just don't understand.
Well, what don't you understand? We have a fellow who's missing. We know he's been to your garage. We've talked to all the neighbors now. You know, the neighbors saw you changing the lock about a week and a half ago. Neighbors watch. They see all these things. Little things that you don't realize. Okay? We know the lock was changed long before the 15th. Yet when you get there on the 15th, you tell me, oh, that's your lock on there on the 15th. It's not till you go back with the policeman last night that you notice, or you say. So that's a lie. That's a lie you told me. When you gave your version of events to Detective Tabler last night, your version of events was different than what you told me today. What you wrote down was different than what you told me in this room. What you told me in this room when I first came in was different from your final version of events. You've changed your whole story. All kinds of different lies. Now, I know this isn't an easy thing to live with. Something went wrong there. Like I said, I don't think you're a bad guy. You seem like a decent guy. You got a wife, you got a small child, you're trying to do the best. I don't think, I don't know, but I don't think you're doing that well financially. I think it's a tough life what you're in. You're trying to do your best, but something went wrong. Maybe you were just trying to make a better movie. I don't know. But something went wrong and you're involved. And this is not going to go away, Mark. And you know that. You're not a dumb guy. You know it's not going to go away. This is going to keep on eating at you and eating at you.
I just feel like I'm in the fucking Twilight Zone right now.
And why do you feel you're in the Twilight Zone?
What you're seeing now is what you'll see for the vast majority of this interrogation. Mark, avoiding eye contact with the detective, speechless. For a man who previously would not stop talking, this is a sign of defeat. The interrogation continues, and Mark remains basically unresponsive to the detective attempting to appeal to his emotions.
What happened between you and John, Mark? John's gone missing. The reason you're sitting there is you're the guy that made him go missing. I'm just trying to find out the why behind it. Why this happened, what turned it to make you do something like this. There's obviously got to be other factors involved. It's not easy, Mark, I know. But how does your life go on if we don't clear this up? How do you ever begin to rebuild it again?
To clarify, there are signs of stress throughout this footage, but if we were to base our assumptions off of Mark's own analysis in the profile of a psychopath, it's unlikely that the stress is caused by remorse or guilt, and more likely due to him regretting being caught and the implications that come from it. It feels as if Mark has no intentions of sharing information about the disappearance of John Altinger. Any direct demands or suggestions to give information about the case is met with silence. So why isn't Mark demanding a lawyer? What is Mark looking to gain by sitting there with the detective any longer? Mark only seems to be responsive to non-confrontational comments that he can bounce his own thoughts off of. In other words, Mark is looking for a conversation. In Mark's eyes, there's no conversation to be had about the disappearance of John Altinger. He realizes that the facade is up and that the authorities now have enough information that everybody is on the same page. Nobody has ever spoken to Mark while also recognizing him for who he truly is. This is possibly the closest that Mark has ever been to a genuine dialogue without the pressure to keep up his web of lies, allowing himself to be silent for as long as he wants and only responding to things that he wants to respond to. Mark knows what comes after this, talking to a lawyer being the first step. But rather than rushing into that whole process, it's as if he's taking this moment in time to reflect on what has led him to this fate, to accept the consequences that are to come, and to have his first real conversation. Despite being successful in piecing together Mark's involvement in John Altinger's disappearance, Detective Clark had no choice but to let Mark go after this interrogation. Mark was still denying his involvement, and no physical evidence had been found yet. And without a confession or physical evidence, there was no legal means to arrest Mark just yet. The homicide unit would proceed by searching the garage and Mark's house for any evidence that they could find. They then seized a plethora of movie props and personal items. On October 22nd, 2008, just 2 days after Mark was confronted about being a primary suspect, police were searching Mark's computer files, and in the recycling bin, they found 2 deleted text documents. One was the profile of a psychopath referenced earlier, and the other was named SK Confessions. It started off saying, "This story is based on true events. The names and the events were altered slightly to protect the guilty. This is the story of my progression into becoming a serial killer. Like anyone just starting out a new skill, I had a bit of a trial and error in the beginning of my misadventures. Allow me to start from the beginning, and I think you will see what I mean. This was a major piece of evidence that led to Mark Twitchell being arrested on October 31st, 2008. It wasn't until 18 months later, in June of 2010, that Mark would ask to meet with Edmonton homicide detectives at the Edmonton Remand Center. When they met, Mark Twitchell passed over a piece of paper folded in half. On the paper was a map pointing out a neighborhood in northern Edmonton. The writing on the paper said, "Location of John Altinger's remains." The next day, a recovery team found the remains of a human body, including a torso dismembered by a saw. During Mark's trial, Mark confessed to the killing of John Altinger. However, he claimed to have done it in self-defense. His story was that it was all meant to be a hoax to gain publicity on the internet for his new film. But when John realized there was no Jen to meet, he became erratic and attacked Mark. Mark then hit John over the head with a metal pipe to incapacitate him, then reached for a knife and stabbed him to ensure his safety. Unfortunately for Mark, with the overwhelming amount of evidence against him, including DNA from John Altinger found in Mark's clothing and in the trunk of his car, SK confessions, and the testimony from his first victim and survivor Giles Tetraelt, the jury didn't buy his story. On April 12th, 2011, Mark Twitchell was convicted of first-degree murder for the death of John Altinger and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for 25 years. There is still one thing left to clarify regarding the overarching theme of this video, and that is, why is Mark Twitchell so commonly associated with the copycat effect? In order to precisely answer that question, I need to introduce one more subject.
I'm gonna tell you something that I've never told anyone before.
Okay.
I'm a serial killer.
This is Dexter Morgan. Dexter Morgan is a blood spatter expert based in Miami, Florida. None of his coworkers, including his police officer sister, suspect anything of him other than a slightly creepy fascination with blood. But Dexter has a more sinister side. He doesn't just solve the crimes, he commits them too. Dexter is a serial killer who kills serial killers. Trained as a child by his father to only kill bad people, Dexter has a very specific and meticulous hunting ritual. Once he captures his victim, he sets up a kill room wherever he sees fit, usually a place with a table where he can cover the entire room with plastic covers to easily prevent any traces of evidence. He would then immobilize the victim, usually by securing them to the table using items such as shrink wrap, duct tape, or belts. He then waits for the victim to wake up and then taunts them before eventually ending their life. But how does Dexter Morgan connect to Mark Twitchell in any way? Well, when investigators finally got the chance to enter the garage being rented by Mark Twitchell, they found what they believed was a kill room, one that was strikingly similar to the one set up by Dexter. It was a large open space that housed a single table in the middle of the room, and when searched using luminol, the floor lit up all over the room, with the highest concentration being underneath the table. Mark also had a burning passion for the show Dexter, as well as other fictional content, which was borderlining on obsessive. Although the similarities between Dexter Morgan and Mark Twitchell are very eerie and likely an accurate result of the so-called copycat effect, Mark has never made any statements to completely confirm or deny this. There are two ends to the spectrum of blame in these copycat cases. On one end, the media holds no responsibility for the actions of their audience. Messages in the media can be subjective, and if anyone crosses a line or interprets those messages in a dangerous way, the media should not be held accountable. On the other end, the media does hold some responsibility for the actions of their audience. The media has the power to draw the lines themselves on what exactly to portray on their end to prevent the dangerous interpretation in the first place. At this point in time, it's hard to say if one side is more correct than the other. The reality is that the more research and awareness of this phenomenon that there is, the more appropriate the handling of these cases will be in the hands of the media. And hopefully, people will be less likely to use these stories to justify their twisted desires. Mark was an isolated mind, and once he found an outlet to express his dark feelings, he took advantage of it. Had he not used murder as his choice of expression, it's unclear whether or not he would have found another menacing outlet, or if a healthier outlet would have satisfied his corrupt urges. But one thing is for certain. The final decision was Mark's. In Mark's mind, there was no difference between living life spreading joy versus hurting those around him. He's numb, and the effect that his actions had on others meant nothing unless it affected him. But even when we feel there's no point in doing the right thing versus the wrong thing, the choice is always still there. In a world where the evil of humanity is often served to us on a silver platter through all different avenues of media, where technology is driving us to be more isolated than ever, we have a choice. challenge this status quo and become a light in the dark world around us, or give in to the dark passenger within us.